At my wife's funeral, my son whispered, "Now your house is mine. You have a week to pack your things." I didn't argue. I simply called my lawyer and said, "Let's begin." 3 days later, police arrived at his door. I'm glad you're here with me. Please listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. For 43 years, Margaret and I built our life together in the house on Maple Street. We planted the oak tree in the front yard when it was barely taller than our son David. We painted every room at least 3 times, changed the wallpaper in the kitchen more times than I could count, and filled every corner with memories. Margaret loved that house. She loved the morning light in the breakfast nook, the way the porch creaked when you sat in the swing, the garden where she grew tomatoes every summer. David was our only child. We gave him everything: private school education, college tuition fully paid, help with his first car, his wedding. Margaret spoiled him, I'll admit that. I tried to teach him about hard work and responsibility, but his mother always smoothed over the rough edges. "He'll learn," she'd say. "He's still young." Even when he was 35, she said he was still young. The first warning sign came about 5 years ago. David started asking questions about our finances. How much was the house worth? Did we have life insurance? What were our retirement accounts looking like? He framed it as concern, of course. "Dad, I just want to make sure you and Mum are taken care of." But something in his voice made my stomach turn. Margaret didn't hear it. She thought it was sweet that he was thinking about our future. Then came the requests for loans. His business was struggling, he said. Just temporary cash flow problems. 10,000 here, 15,000 there. We helped him because that's what parents do. But he never paid us back. When I asked about it, he'd get defensive. "After everything you spent on my sister-in-law's family, you're worried about a few $1,000s. We didn't have any other children. He was lying, and he knew I knew he was lying. Margaret got sick 18 months ago. Cancer. It moved fast despite the treatments, despite the prayers, despite everything we tried. David visited less during those months, always with an excuse. Work was demanding. His wife, Jennifer, wasn't feeling well. Traffic was terrible. But I noticed something else. When he did visit, his eyes wandered around the house. He looked at things differently, appraising them, calculating. The funeral was on a grey Tuesday in October. The oak tree had turned brilliant red and gold, Margaret's favourite time of year. People filled our house afterward, bringing casseroles and condolences. I moved through the rooms in a fog of grief, accepting hugs, thanking people for coming, trying to hold myself together. David found me in the garage. I was sitting on an old wooden stool, just needing a moment away from the crowd, away from the sympathetic faces that reminded me my wife was gone. I heard the door open and thought someone was looking for the bathroom. "Dad." David's voice was flat, businesslike. I looked up. My son stood there in his funeral suit, hands in his pockets, and his expression was something I'd never seen before. Cold, entitled. "Now that Mum's gone, we need to talk about the house." My heart, already broken, cracked a little deeper. "David, your mother's not even buried yet." "I know, and I'm sorry, but we need to be practical." He stepped closer, and I could see Jennifer hovering in the doorway behind him. "This house is too big for you now. You can't maintain it alone. The smart thing, the right thing, is for you to sign it over to me. Jennifer and I need more space, and you can move into a nice assisted living facility. We've already looked at a few." I stared at him, searching for some sign of the boy I'd raised. The boy who cried when his goldfish died. The boy who made Margaret cards on her birthday. That boy was gone, if he'd ever really existed. "You've already looked at facilities?" My voice came out hoarse. "Dad, don't make this harder than it needs to be." He pulled a folder from inside his jacket. "I had papers drawn up. You sign the house over to me, and I'll make sure you're taken care of. You have a week to pack up what you want to keep." The garage suddenly felt very small. Behind him, Jennifer smiled, a thin, satisfied smile that told me this had been planned long before Margaret's last breath. "A week," I repeated. "I'm doing this for your own good. You'll see that eventually." David set the folder on the workbench. "Think it over, but don't take too long. I'm being generous with the timeline." They left me sitting there in the garage, surrounded by Margaret's gardening tools and 50 years of accumulated life. I didn't cry. Something else was happening inside me, something cold and clear. I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer. "Richard," I said when he answered. "It's time. Start everything we discussed." I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David's face in the garage. Cold, calculating, impatient for his inheritance, while his mother's body wasn't even cold. I sat in the living room until dawn, Margaret's reading lamp casting shadows on the walls, and I made myself face the truth I'd been avoiding for years. My son was not a good man. The realization felt like drowning. What had I done wrong? Where had Margaret and I failed? I replayed years of memories, searching for the moment he'd changed. But maybe there was no single moment. Maybe we'd been too blind to see who he really was. Or maybe we'd seen it and made excuses because he was our son, our only child, and love makes you stupid. But grief would have to wait. I had work to do. At 7 in the morning, I went to my study and unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a fireproof box I'd bought 3 years ago. Margaret knew about it, but never asked what was inside. "Your private papers," she'd called it, respecting my need for some things to be just mine. She would have hated knowing why I really needed it. Inside the box were copies of everything. Bank statements showing the loans David never repaid, $68,000 total. Emails where he'd asked for money, promising to pay it back next month or as soon as the business picks up. Text messages where he'd gotten angry when I'd suggested he get a regular job instead of chasing get-rich-quick schemes. And then there were the other documents, the ones that told a much darker story. 2 years ago, I'd noticed irregularities in my credit card statements. Small charges I didn't recognize, nothing huge, $30 here, $50 there, but consistent. When I'd dug deeper, I'd found that someone had been using my card information for online purchases. The shipping address was David's house. I'd hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Webb, a former police detective who specialized in financial crimes. What Marcus found made me sick. David had been stealing from us for over 3 years. He'd gotten hold of Margaret's social security number and taken out credit cards in her name. He'd forged my signature on a home equity line of credit application. Thankfully, the bank had caught that one and denied it, but the attempt was documented. He'd even created fake invoices from his business and used them to justify the money we'd given him, claiming it was payment for consulting services so he could write it off on his taxes. Marcus's report sat in that fireproof box, along with every shred of evidence he'd gathered. Bank records, credit reports, copies of the forged documents, a paper trail that told the story of a son systematically defrauding his parents. I'd confronted him once, about a year ago. Just once. I'd asked him directly about the credit card charges. He'd denied everything, said I must be confused, that maybe Mom had used the card and forgotten. Then he'd gotten angry, accused me of not trusting him, of treating him like a criminal. He'd stormed out and didn't speak to us for 2 months. Margaret had been heartbroken. She'd begged me to apologize, to make peace with him. And I had, because I couldn't stand to see her cry, especially when she was already so sick. But I'd also called Richard Moss, my attorney, and we'd started making plans. Richard had been my lawyer for 30 years. He'd handled our wills, our estate planning, the incorporation of the small business I'd run before retirement. He was thorough, cautious, and most importantly, he understood family dynamics. When I'd told him about David, shown him Marcus's report, Richard hadn't seemed surprised. "I've seen this before," he'd said quietly. "More often than you'd think. Adult children who view their parents as assets to be liquidated. We'd spent months preparing, restructuring my assets, protecting Margaret's interests, creating legal barriers that David wouldn't see until it was too late. Richard had wanted me to confront David legally then, but I'd refused. Margaret was dying. I wouldn't spend her last months in a courtroom battle with our son. When she's gone, I'd told Richard, if he makes a move after she's gone, then we act. And David had made his move exactly as I'd feared he would. Now, sitting in my study with the evidence spread across my desk, I picked up the phone and called Richard's direct line. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said when he answered. His voice was gentle but professional. "Margaret was a wonderful woman." "Thank you." I swallowed hard. "David came to me yesterday, at the funeral reception. He wants the house. He's given me a week to sign it over and move out." The silence on the other end lasted several seconds. Then Richard's voice came back, harder now. "He couldn't even wait until she was buried." "No, he couldn't." "All right." I heard papers rustling. "Then we proceed exactly as we planned. Are you ready for this? Once we start, there's no going back. This will destroy your relationship with your son." I looked at the photo on my desk. Margaret and me on our wedding day, young and hopeful and stupidly in love. I thought about the boy we'd raised and the man he'd become. He destroyed it himself. I said, "Let's begin." Richard scheduled an emergency meeting for that afternoon. His office was downtown, in one of those old buildings with real wood paneling and leather chairs that smelled like history and money. I'd been there dozens of times over the years, but never for something like this. His secretary, Paula, offered me coffee with sympathetic eyes. She'd met Margaret at office Christmas parties. Everyone had loved Margaret. That was the cruelest part. Everyone except our own son had valued her. "Come in, Thomas." Richard stood in his doorway, a tall man gone grey and distinguished in his 60s. "Let's get started." His conference room table was already covered with documents. Richard introduced me to a younger woman with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. "This is Linda Chen, my associate. She specializes in elder financial abuse cases. I've brought her in because what David has done, what we can prove he's done, constitutes elder fraud under state law." Elder fraud. The words made me feel old and foolish. Linda must have seen something in my face. "Mr. Harrison, this isn't your fault. Financial exploitation of elderly parents by adult children is more common than people realize. And you did exactly the right thing by documenting everything." We spent 3 hours going through every piece of evidence: Marcus Webb's investigative report, the forged documents, the credit card fraud, the pattern of manipulation and theft. Linda took notes in rapid shorthand, occasionally asking questions that proved she understood exactly what we were dealing with. "Here's what we're going to do," Richard said finally. "First, we're filing for a restraining order prohibiting David from entering your property or contacting you except through legal counsel. Second, we're reporting the fraud to the police and the district attorney's office. The evidence is overwhelming. Forged signatures, identity theft, credit card fraud. These are criminal offenses, not just civil matters." My stomach knotted. He'll go to prison? Possibly. Probably, given the amount of money involved and the duration of the fraud. Richard's expression was kind but firm. "Thomas, your son has committed serious crimes against you and Margaret. If we do this, we do it completely. No halfway measures." I thought about David's face in the garage, the coldness, the entitlement. "Do it," I said. Linda pulled out more papers. "We also need to secure your assets immediately. We're going to transfer the house into a living trust with you as the trustee and beneficiary. David can't touch it. We'll do the same with your bank accounts and investments, By tomorrow afternoon, everything you own will be legally protected." "How long before David realizes what's happening?" I asked. "The restraining order will be served within 48 hours. The police investigation will take longer to formalize, but I'm contacting Detective Sarah Morrison today. She handles white-collar crimes and elder abuse cases. She's thorough." Richard paused. "David will know something is wrong very soon. How do you think he'll react?" I thought about my son's temper, the way he'd exploded when I'd questioned him before. "He'll be angry. He'll think he can intimidate me into backing down." "Let him try," Linda said quietly. "Every threat, every contact, every attempt at manipulation, it all becomes more evidence. Just don't engage with him directly. Everything goes through us." I signed documents until my hand cramped. Powers of attorney, trust papers, affidavits detailing David's crimes. Each signature felt like I was carving away the last pieces of the future I'd imagined. Sunday dinners, grandchildren, growing old with family around me. But that future had never been real. It was a fantasy I'd clung to while my son plotted to rob me. Richard walked me to the parking lot. "Go home, Thomas. Rest if you can. The next few days will be difficult. David will realize you're not cooperating, and he won't take it well." He was right. I got home around 6. The house felt enormous and empty without Margaret. I made myself eat some of the casserole a neighbor had brought, forcing down food I couldn't taste. Then I sat in the living room, in Margaret's favorite chair, and waited. David called at 8:30. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 9, again at 9:30. By 10 o'clock he'd called 7 times. I listened to the messages on speaker, Richard's words echoing in my head. Every threat, every contact, more evidence. The first messages were cajoling. "Dad, come on, pick up. We need to talk about this. I'm trying to help you." By the 4th message, anger crept in. "You're being unreasonable. I'm your son. You owe me this house. Mom would want me to have it." The 7th message was pure rage. "You think you can ignore me? That house is mine. Everything you have is mine. I'm coming over tomorrow, and we're going to settle this." I saved every voicemail and forwarded them to Richard's office email. Then I double-checked that all my doors were locked, turned on the security system I'd had installed 6 months ago, another precaution Margaret had thought was unnecessary, and went to bed. I still didn't sleep. But this time, it wasn't from grief. It was anticipation. David had shown his hand. Now it was time to show him mine. The next morning, I was drinking coffee when I heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, I saw David's BMW pull up, and both he and Jennifer got out. They marched toward the front door like they owned the place. I picked up my phone and dialed 911. "My name is Thomas Harrison. I'm about to be served with a restraining order against my son, but he's currently trying to force entry into my home. I need police assistance." David was pounding on the door when the first patrol car arrived. The police arrived within minutes. 2 officers, one older with grey hair and a weathered face, the other younger but with eyes that had already seen too much. They found David still pounding on my door, Jennifer standing behind him with her phone out, probably recording what she thought would be evidence of my instability. I opened the door before David could break it down. "Mr. Harrison," the older officer said. His nameplate read, "Sergeant Martinez." "You called about a disturbance?" "Yes. This is my son, David Harrison, and his wife, Jennifer. I've been informed that a restraining order is being issued against David. He's been calling me repeatedly and has now shown up at my home despite my requests for him to stay away." David's face went purple. "This is my father's house. He's confused, officer. My mother just died, and he's not thinking clearly. I'm here to help him." "Help me?" I kept my voice calm, though my heart hammered. "You gave me 1 week to move out of my own home. You brought legal documents to your mother's funeral to try to force me to sign over my property." "That's not— You're twisting everything!" David turned to the officers. "He's elderly. He's grieving. He doesn't understand what he's saying." Jennifer stepped forward, her voice dripping with false concern. "We're worried about him living alone. We just want to make sure he's safe." Sergeant Martinez held up a hand. "Ma'am, sir, I'm going to need you both to step back." He turned to me. "Mr. Harrison, do you have documentation of this restraining order?" "My attorney has filed for it. His name is Richard Moss." I provided Richard's contact information. He can verify everything. I also have voicemails from David that contained threats. The younger officer, whose tag said Officer Park, was already on his radio checking the system. "Sarge, there's a temporary emergency order in the system as of 2 hours ago. David Harrison is prohibited from contacting or approaching Thomas Harrison." David's eyes widened. "What? That's insane. You can't just— Dad, what have you done?" "I've protected myself," I said quietly. "From you. Mr. Harrison." Sergeant Martinez addressed David now, his tone professional but firm. "You need to leave this property immediately. The restraining order is active. If you refuse to leave or attempt to contact your father again, you'll be arrested for violation of a court order." "This is ridiculous!" David's hands clenched into fists. "That's my father. This is family business." "It's a legal matter now, sir. Please leave." Jennifer grabbed David's arm. "Come on. We'll call our lawyer. This won't stand." But as they turned to go, David looked back at me with something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Pure hatred. "You'll regret this, old man. Everything you have will be mine anyway. You can't live forever." Officer Park's expression hardened. "Sir, that sounded like a threat." "It's not a threat, it's a fact." David jerked away from Jennifer's grip. "He's my father. When he dies, everything comes to me. He can play these games now, but I'll get what's mine." Sergeant Martinez exchanged a glance with his partner. "Mr. Harrison, Thomas, would you like to press charges for criminal threatening?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to watch them handcuff my son right there on my front porch. But Richard's voice echoed in my head. "Let them hang themselves. Document everything." "Not at this time," I said, "but I want this incident documented in your report." "Absolutely." Sergeant Martinez turned back to David. "Mr. Harrison, you need to leave. Now. If you contact your father again in any way, you will be arrested. Do you understand?" David stared at me for a long moment. Then he smiled, a terrible, cold smile. "I understand perfectly." They left. I watched their car disappear down Maple Street, and only then did I start shaking. Officer Park noticed. "Are you all right, sir? Do you need medical attention?" "No, just adrenaline." Sergeant Martinez handed me a card. "Listen, I've worked a lot of family cases. This kind of thing, children trying to take advantage of elderly parents, it happens more than people think. You did the right thing by protecting yourself. But be careful. These situations can escalate." "I know, thank you." After they left, I called Richard and told him everything. He listened without interrupting, then said, "That threat David made. You can't live forever. That's going in our file. Document everything, Thomas. Every contact, every incident." "I will. And Thomas, take a few days. Rest. Let the legal process work. The restraining order is active, the police report is filed, and the DA's office is reviewing the fraud evidence. You've done your part. Now let us do ours." The next 3 days blurred together. I slept, finally, exhausted from grief and stress. Neighbors brought more food. Margaret's best friend Carol came by and sat with me, not saying much, just being there. I sorted through Margaret's clothes, boxing them up for donation, crying over her favorite sweater that still smelled like her perfume. I didn't hear from David directly. The restraining order was working. But on the 3rd day, Jennifer called from her phone. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Thomas!" She'd never called me by my first name before. "We need to talk, not about legal things, just person to person." "Jennifer, the restraining order. It's against David, not me. Please, just 10 minutes. I can come over or we can meet somewhere public. This doesn't have to be so ugly." Red flags waved in my mind, but curiosity won. Public. The coffee shop on 3rd Street. 1 hour. Thank you. You won't regret this. But as I drove to meet her, I wondered if I already did. The coffee house on 3rd Street was one of those local places that had been there forever, with mismatched furniture and art from local painters on the walls. Margaret and I used to come here on Sunday mornings. The owner, Rita, gave me a sad smile when I walked in. Jennifer was already there, sitting at a corner table. She'd dressed carefully. Not too formal, not too casual. Approachable. She even had tears ready when I sat down. Thomas, thank you for coming. She reached across the table like she wanted to hold my hand. I kept mine in my lap. I know things have gotten so ugly between you and David, but we're family. We should be able to work this out. David gave me 1 week to move out of my house, I said quietly. At his mother's funeral, what exactly is there to work out? He was upset, grieving. People say things they don't mean when they're emotional. Her voice was soft, reasonable. This was a performance. David loves you. He's your son. He's just worried about you being alone in that big house. He loves the house. I corrected. Not me. That's not fair. She dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Yes, he handled it badly. I've told him that. But his concern is real. You're 74 years old, Thomas. Living alone at your age, especially after losing Margaret, it's dangerous. What if you fall? What if you have a medical emergency? I have a medical alert system. Neighbors who check on me. Friends. I'm not helpless, Jennifer. No one's saying you are. She leaned forward, her expression earnest. But wouldn't it be better to downsize? To let us take over the maintenance and expenses of that property? We could help you find a beautiful place, not assisted living, just something smaller, easier, and you wouldn't have to worry about property taxes, repairs, all those headaches. There it was. The real pitch. Give them the house, and they'd graciously allow me to exist somewhere else on my own dime. What happens to David's legal troubles? I asked. The fraud, the identity theft, the forged documents. Jennifer's mask slipped for just a second. Her eyes hardened. That's all a misunderstanding. David never meant to. He forged my signature. He stole Margaret's identity. He took out credit cards in her name. These aren't misunderstandings, Jennifer. They're crimes. You're his father. The tears were gone now, replaced by anger. How can you do this to your own son? Send him to prison? Destroy his life? He destroyed his own life. He made his choices. Fine. Jennifer sat back, crossing her arms. Then here's what's going to happen. David has friends, good friends, who work in finance, in social services. If you push this legal case, we'll file a competency petition. We'll argue that you're not mentally fit to manage your own affairs, grief-induced dementia, depression. We'll have doctors testify that you need a guardian, and guess who that guardian will be? There it was. The real threat. I felt cold wash over me. You'd have me declared incompetent. We'd have you protected. She corrected, but her smile was vicious now. From yourself. From making terrible decisions that hurt your family. David would become your legal guardian, and all your assets would be placed under his management. For your own good. I stood up slowly. This conversation is over. Thomas, wait! The mask tried to come back. I didn't mean, we can still work this out. Just drop the legal case. Drop the restraining order. Let's be family again. We were never family, I said. Not to you and David. We were just resources to be exploited. I walked out while she was still calling after me, her voice shifting from pleading to angry in the space of seconds. In my car, I sat for several minutes, hands shaking on the steering wheel. The competency petition threat was real. I'd heard about such cases. Adult children who managed to get their parents declared unfit, then took control of everything. It was exactly the kind of nuclear option David would pursue. I called Richard immediately. They're threatening a competency petition, I told him, my voice unsteady. Jennifer, just take a breath, Thomas. We're 3 steps ahead of them. Richard's calm steadied me. 2 months ago, remember. You had a complete neurological and psychiatric evaluation at my recommendation. Dr. Ellen Fraser, one of the most respected geriatric psychiatrists in the state. Her report states clearly that you have full cognitive capacity, no signs of dementia, no depression that would impair your judgment. If they try to file a competency petition, we'll destroy it in court. The relief made me dizzy. You knew they might try this. I've seen these patterns before. Predatory adult children have a playbook. We just have a better one. When I got home, I found Carol sitting on my porch with 2 other women. Beth and Sandra, Margaret's friends from her book club. We're not leaving you alone, Carol announced. Not with everything going on. We're taking shifts. We'll be here, checking on you, making sure you eat real food, and God help David and that awful wife of his if they show up. I felt tears sting my eyes. You don't have to. Margaret was our sister, Beth said firmly. She was a retired nurse with no-nonsense eyes. You think we don't know what David's been doing? We all knew. Margaret knew too toward the end. She made us promise to look after you. She what? Sandra, quiet and usually shy, nodded. About a month before she died, she called us all together. She said David was going to try something after she was gone. She said you'd need friends, real friends, not family who pretend. So here we are. Margaret had known. Of course she had. She'd been protecting me even as she was dying. That night, Carol made dinner while Beth inventoried my medications, and Sandra simply sat with me, talking about Margaret, sharing memories that made me laugh through tears. They left at 9, but not before Carol handed me a schedule. We're coming by every day. You need us, you call. Any of us, anytime. David and Jennifer had played their cards, but they'd miscalculated something crucial. They thought I was alone. I wasn't. They came back a week later. Not to my house. They weren't that stupid. But they found me anyway. I was at the grocery store, something I'd been avoiding because I hated the sympathetic looks people gave me in the aisles where Margaret used to shop. But I needed milk and bread, and I refused to be a prisoner in my own life. I was comparing prices on coffee when I heard her voice. Thomas, what a coincidence. Jennifer stood at the end of the aisle, a shopping basket in her hand, like this was perfectly normal. Behind her, trying to look casual near the pasta display, was David. My first instinct was to leave immediately. The restraining order. I pulled out my phone. We're in a public place, Jennifer said quickly. We have every right to shop here. We're not approaching you. We're not violating anything. She was right, technically. They were 10 feet away, not coming closer. Other shoppers moved around us, oblivious. What do you want? I asked, keeping my finger over Richard's speed dial. David stepped forward slightly. He looked terrible, unshaven, clothes wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. Dad, please, can we just talk? Like adults? Like family? The restraining order. You're in public. We're not threatening you. We just want to talk. His voice cracked. You're my father. Don't I deserve that much? A conversation? An elderly woman pushing her cart gave me a concerned look, probably wondering what kind of heartless man wouldn't talk to his clearly distraught son. Appearances. They'd chosen this location specifically for appearances. 5 minutes, I said. Outside, in the parking lot where there are security cameras. We walked out separately. I kept my distance, my phone visible in my hand. The parking lot was busy with midday shoppers. Safe enough. Dad. David tried the pleading tone again. This has gone too far. The restraining order, the lawyers, the police. It's tearing our family apart. Mum would be heartbroken. Don't. My voice came out harder than I intended. Don't you dare talk about what your mother would want. She loved you despite everything, and you couldn't even wait until she was buried to try to steal from me. I'm not trying to steal anything. His mask cracked, showing the anger underneath. That house should be mine. Everything you have should be mine. I'm your son. You're a thief. I said it clearly, calmly. You forged documents, you stole identities, you committed fraud. Those are facts, David, not opinions. Jennifer put a hand on David's arm, playing the calming wife. Thomas, let's not throw around accusations. If there were some irregularities in paperwork, we can explain them. David sometimes helped you and Margaret with bills when you were confused. I was never confused. And maybe some signatures looked similar, but that's not fraud. That's a son helping his aging parents. Her smile was saccharine. No court is going to see it differently. A devoted son, caring for his ill mother and elderly father. You'll look like a vindictive old man trying to punish his child for helping him. I have documentation, I said. Every forged signature, every fake credit card, every lie, and I have witness statements from people who saw exactly what you both were doing. David's face flushed dark red. What witnesses? Who's been talking to you? Carol? Those nosy bitches from Mom's book club? They don't know anything. They know enough. You're going to believe them over your own son? David stepped closer, and I raised my phone warningly. He stopped, but his voice kept rising. You're going to destroy me over money? Over a house? I'm your blood? Your only child? You destroyed yourself. Fine. The mask shattered completely. David's face twisted with rage. You want to play it this way? Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to fight you on everything. Every document, every claim, every penny. I'll drag this through courts for years. I'll make your life hell. And when you die, and you will die, old man, I'll contest the will. I'll tie up your estate for decades. Whatever you thought you were protecting, I'll make sure it goes up in legal fees before anyone else gets a dime. David, Jennifer hissed, looking around at the shoppers who were now openly staring. But he was past caring. You think you're so smart? You think your lawyer and your evidence matter? I'm 43 years old. You're 74. I can wait you out. And when you're gone, I'll make sure everyone knows what a hateful, spiteful old bastard you were. I'll tell everyone how you abandoned your son, how you chose strangers over family. The words should have hurt. Maybe they would later. But in that moment, standing in a grocery store parking lot watching my son reveal exactly who he'd become, I felt something else entirely. Clarity. Are you finished? I asked quietly. David blinked, his rage stuttering. What? I asked if you're finished. Because I want to make sure you've said everything you need to say. Everything you want on record. His eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I tapped my phone screen, and the recording stopped. I've recorded this entire conversation, every threat, every admission. Your lawyer is going to love that. The color drained from David's face. You can't! That's illegal! Actually, this is a one-party consent state. I can legally record any conversation I'm part of. I'd learned that from Richard. And you just confessed to planning to fraudulently contest my will, to intentionally destroying my estate, and you made what could be interpreted as threats against my life. Jennifer grabbed David's arm hard. We're leaving. Now, don't say another word. You bastard! David whispered, but the rage was replaced with something else now. Fear. You set us up. No, you set yourself up. I just pressed record. They left. David was shaking as Jennifer practically dragged him to their car. I stood in the parking lot, watching them go, and realized I was shaking too, not from fear this time. From anger. Clean, cold, righteous anger. I got back in my car and called Richard. I have another recording for you. And Richard, it's time to go on offense. I'm listening. I want them prosecuted. Fully. No plea deals. No reductions. I want every charge filed that can be filed, and I want them to face every consequence their actions deserve. There was a pause. Thomas, are you sure? Once we go down this road, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. All right, then, Richard said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Let's destroy them. The meeting with Detective Sarah Morrison took place on a Wednesday morning in the District Attorney's conference room. Richard had arranged it, not just a simple interview, but a full presentation of evidence to both the detective and Assistant District Attorney James Riley. This is highly unusual, Richard had explained the night before. Usually these cases take months to build, but the evidence is so comprehensive and the crimes so clear-cut that they want to move fast. They're concerned David might try to flee or destroy additional evidence. I arrived 15 minutes early. Richard met me in the lobby, and we rode the elevator up in silence. I'd barely slept, my mind cycling through everything that had led to this moment. Margaret would have hated this. But Margaret wasn't here, and I was done protecting David from the consequences of his choices. Detective Morrison was younger than I'd expected. Maybe 40, with sharp eyes and the demeanor of someone who'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. Ada Riley was older, silver-haired, with reading glasses perched on his nose, and an expression that suggested he'd seen the worst of human nature and still managed to be disappointed. "Mr. Harrison." Detective Morrison shook my hand firmly. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances, but I want you to know, we take elder financial abuse very seriously. These crimes destroy families and devastate victims." "Thank you." We sat around a conference table covered with documents. Richard had organized everything into color-coded folders, criminal elegance. For the next 2 hours, we walked them through David's crimes in meticulous detail. The forged signatures on financial documents, Marcus Webb's investigative report with photographic evidence of fake invoices, credit card statements showing charges David made on Margaret's cards he'd opened using her stolen identity, bank records proving the pattern of theft over 3 years, the home equity line application with my forged signature, email chains where David had lied about repaying loans, and finally my recordings, both the voicemails after the funeral and the parking lot confrontation. Detective Morrison took notes steadily, her expression darkening as we progressed. Ada Riley stopped us occasionally to ask questions, each one sharp and targeted. "This credit card, when was your wife made aware it had been opened in her name?" "She never knew," I said quietly. "David hid the statements. Margaret was sick by then, not handling the mail much. I only discovered it after she passed." "And this forged signature on the home equity application, you're certain you didn't sign this? I never even saw this document until the bank called to notify me they'd denied it due to discrepancies. That's when I hired the private investigator." "Smart," Morrison said. "Most victims don't think to document. They confront the abuser who manipulates them into backing down. You built a case." "I had to. I knew if I confronted David without proof, he'd find a way to make me seem like the problem." "He tried that anyway," Richard interjected, sliding across Jennifer's competency petition threat, documented in my email to him after the coffee shop meeting. "They've already attempted to have Mr. Harrison declared mentally unfit so they could gain control of his assets." Riley's eyebrows rose. "Ambitious and stupid, given the psychiatric evaluation you had done. We played the recordings last." David's voice filled the conference room. First the funeral day voicemails, casual at first, then angry, then threatening. Then the parking lot confrontation, where he'd laid out his entire plan to destroy my estate and wait for me to die. "I can wait you out," Morrison repeated, her voice flat. He actually said that. He was angry. He wasn't thinking clearly. Or he was thinking exactly clearly. Riley countered. "This shows motive, intent, and ongoing criminal conspiracy." He looked at Richard. "You've given us gift-wrapped felonies, multiple counts of identity theft, forgery, wire fraud, credit card fraud, and attempted extortion, plus the competency petition threat could constitute attempted fraud on the court." "What happens now?" I asked. Morrison closed her folder. "We arrest him. Today. We've already prepared the warrant. We'll also be executing a search warrant on his residence for financial documents, computers, and any other evidence. If Mrs. Jennifer Harrison was complicit, and based on these recordings she was, she'll be charged as well." The reality hit me like a physical blow. "He'll actually go to jail. Mr. Harrison, your son stole over $70,000 from you and your late wife. He forged legal documents, He committed identity theft against a dying woman. Yes, he's going to jail." Riley's voice wasn't unkind, but it was firm. "And frankly, he deserves it." Richard put a hand on my shoulder. "Thomas, you can still back out. We can pursue civil remedies instead. But if we do this—" "We do this," I said. "All the way." Morrison stood. "Then let's move. I want to catch him at home before he knows we're coming. They arrested David at 2 in the afternoon. I wasn't there. Richard insisted I stay away. But Morrison called me afterward. He denied everything at first. Said you were senile, that we were persecuting him for trying to help his poor, confused father. Then we showed him the evidence." She paused. "He broke down. Started crying, saying you'd ruined his life, that you were supposed to take care of him, that he was your son. His wife tried to play the victim, said she didn't know anything about the fraud. We arrested her too." "How long before trial?" "Months, probably. But Mr. Harrison, the evidence is overwhelming. His lawyer, if he's smart, will advise him to take a plea deal. This goes to trial, your son is looking at 10 to 15 years minimum." After she hung up, I sat in Margaret's chair, in our living room, in our house that David had tried to steal, and I waited for guilt or regret. It didn't come. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. David's lawyer called Richard 3 days after the arrest. His name was Mitchell Brandt, one of those expensive defense attorneys who specialized in making bad people look sympathetic. Richard put the call on speaker so I could hear. "Richard, we need to talk about resolving this situation without trial." "I'm listening." "My client made some mistakes. He acknowledges that. But this prosecution is excessive. David Harrison is a first-time offender, a family man, who made some poor decisions during a stressful time. His mother had just died. Emotions were running high. His mother had been dead for less than 24 hours when he tried to force his father out of his home." Richard interrupted. "And the fraud began 3 years ago, long before she passed. Don't insult me with the grief defense." A pause. "What does your client want?" "Justice." "Be specific." "Full prosecution, every charge, no plea deal, trial." I heard Brandt take a sharp breath. "That's— Richard, come on, be reasonable. This destroys David's life. Prison time, felony record, financial ruin. Is that what Thomas wants? To see his only son go to prison?" Richard looked at me. I nodded. "Yes," Richard said simply. "That's exactly what he wants." "Fine. Then let me talk to Thomas directly. Father to son, without lawyers in the middle. Maybe they can work this out." "Absolutely not. Any contact would violate the restraining order." "Then a letter. David wants to write his father a letter. You can screen it first, but the man deserves a chance to speak to his own child." Richard looked at me questioningly. I thought about it. "One letter. You read it first. If it's not threatening or manipulative, I'll read it." The letter arrived 2 days later. Richard opened it in his office and read it before passing it to me. Well, you should read it yourself. "Dad, I know you probably hate me. I don't blame you. I've had a lot of time to think in here, and I'm starting to understand how badly I screwed up. I'm sorry. For all of it. The money, the lies, trying to take the house. I don't know what happened to me. It started so small, just $100 here and there when I was short. And then it got easier. You and Mum always helped me before, so I told myself it wasn't really stealing. It was just borrowing from my future inheritance. But it was stealing. I know that now. And the worst part is, I stole from Mom while she was dying. I can't take that back. I can't make it right. Jennifer's gone. She filed for divorce, took everything we had and left me with the legal bills. I'm going to lose the house, probably my car, everything. I know I deserve it. But Dad, please. I'm begging you. Don't let them send me to prison. I'll pay back every penny. I'll work 3 jobs. I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. But prison will destroy me. I won't survive it. I'm your son. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking anyway. Please, give me one more chance. For Mum's sake, she'd want you to show mercy. I love you, Dad. I know I have a terrible way of showing it, but I do, and I'm so sorry. David. I read it twice. Richard watched me carefully. Well? He asked. He's sorry he got caught, I said. Not sorry for what he did. Sorry for the consequences. That's my read too. But Thomas, this is your decision. If you want to ask the DA to offer a plea deal, reduced charges, lighter sentence, we can do that. He is your son. I thought about Margaret, about what she would want. She'd loved David so completely, so blindly. She would have forgiven him anything. But Margaret had also made her friends promise to protect me after she was gone. She'd known what David was capable of. She'd known, and she'd still loved him. But she'd also made sure I'd be safe. No, I said. No plea deal. He didn't show mercy when he stole from his dying mother. He didn't show mercy when he tried to take my home at her funeral. Why should I show him what he never showed us? Richard nodded slowly. I'll inform Brandt. This goes to trial. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day, sitting in the courtroom while prosecutors methodically destroyed David's defense. Every forged signature was analyzed by handwriting experts. Every fraudulent charge was documented with banking records. Marcus Webb testified about his investigation. Carol, Beth, and Sandra testified about Margaret's final months and David's obvious disinterest in anything but money. David's defense tried everything. They argued I was vindictive. They suggested I was mentally unstable. They claimed David had permission to handle our finances. But every argument crumbled against the mountain of evidence. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, Ada Riley was merciless. He recited every crime, every victim impact, every aggravating factor. Elder abuse, fraud against a dying woman, attempted theft of a family home, pattern of deception spanning years. David Harrison is a predator, Riley concluded. He targeted the people who loved him most, who trusted him completely. He deserves no leniency. The judge agreed. 12 years in federal prison. Full restitution of all stolen funds. Permanent restraining order. Forfeiture of any future inheritance claims. David sobbed as they led him away in handcuffs. He looked at me one last time, his face destroyed, and whispered, "Dad, please." I looked away. Richard walked me out of the courthouse into brilliant sunshine. Reporters shouted questions. Elder abuse cases had become a hot topic, but Richard waved them off. "How do you feel?" he asked when we reached his car. "I don't know," I admitted. "Relieved? Sad? Both?" "That's normal. You did the right thing, Thomas. But that doesn't make it easy." "No," I agreed. "It doesn't. But as we drove away from the courthouse, away from my son and his consequences, I felt something else too. Peace. The first year after the trial was strange. The house felt different. Lighter, somehow, despite Margaret's absence. I'd expected loneliness, maybe depression, but instead I found something unexpected. Freedom. Carol and her book club friends became my family. They dragged me to concerts and art exhibits. Beth taught me to cook actual meals instead of living on casseroles. Sandra, quiet Sandra, turned out to be a master gardener who helped me restore Margaret's flower beds. The tomatoes that summer were the best we'd ever grown. I started volunteering at the senior center, teaching basic financial literacy classes. Protecting yourself from financial abuse became my specialty. Apparently, I had expertise now. The classes filled up every session. Dozens of elderly people came, some with their adult children lurking in the background, faces guilty or defensive. "My daughter keeps asking about my bank accounts," one woman told me after class, her voice shaking. "Says she wants to make sure I'm okay." But something doesn't feel right. "Trust your instincts," I told her, "and document everything." I helped her set up protections. 2 months later, she discovered her daughter had been stealing her Social Security checks. The police arrested her before she could take more. "You saved me," the woman said, crying and hugging me. But I knew the truth. I'd just shown her what I'd learned the hard way. Richard helped me establish a small non-profit, the Margaret Harrison Foundation for Elder Protection. We offered free legal consultations to seniors dealing with financial abuse from family members. We partnered with police departments to train officers on recognizing the signs. We created a network of resources, lawyers, investigators, social workers, all focused on protecting vulnerable elderly people from predatory relatives. Marcus Webb came on as our lead investigator. "You're doing good work," he told me over coffee one morning. "The cases we're seeing, it's epidemic. Adult children who see their parents as ATMs. I know, I lived it. The foundation became my purpose. Margaret would have loved it. She'd always wanted to help people. I even started dating. Not seriously, just dinner occasionally with a widow named Patricia, who volunteered at the same senior center. She made me laugh. She didn't know about David at first. I wasn't sure how to explain, but when I finally told her the whole story, she just nodded. "My son tried something similar," she said quietly. "Wanted me to sell my house and move into his basement apartment. Said it was for my safety. Really, he wanted the house money for his business." "What did you do?" "Told him to go to hell," she smiled. "Then I got a lawyer and changed my will. He gets nothing when I die. Everything goes to animal rescue charities. He hasn't spoken to me in 3 years, and I've never been happier." I understood completely. Life wasn't perfect. I had moments, late at night, mostly, when I thought about David, wondered how he was doing in prison, whether he'd changed, whether he thought about Margaret, about me, about what he'd destroyed. Richard updated me occasionally, though I didn't ask. David tried to appeal the sentence. It was denied. He's in a medium security facility in Colorado. He's got 8 years left, with good behavior. Does he ask about me? No. He blames you for everything. According to his prison counselor, he tells everyone you framed him out of spite. It hurt, but not as much as it once would have. Jennifer's life had imploded more spectacularly. The divorce went through quickly. She'd abandoned David the moment he couldn't benefit her anymore, but her involvement in the fraud, though lesser than David's, still resulted in conviction. She served 18 months in a minimum security facility and came out to find her reputation destroyed. No one would hire her. Her family had disowned her. Last Richard heard, she was working retail in another state under her maiden name, trying to rebuild from nothing. David's assets, everything he'd bought with stolen money, were seized and liquidated. After the lawyers took their fees and the government took its share, I received $42,000 in restitution. Not even close to what he'd stolen, but something. I donated it all to the foundation. On what would have been Margaret's 73rd birthday, I sat in her garden with Carol, Beth, and Sandra. We drank wine, Margaret's favorite rosé, and told stories about her. "She knew," Carol said softly. "About David. She knew exactly what he was, and it broke her heart." "Why didn't she tell me?" I asked. "Because she hoped she was wrong, and because she knew you'd have to handle it without her." Carol squeezed my hand. "She trusted you to do what needed to be done. That night, alone in the house, I stood in front of Margaret's photo. The wedding picture I kept on the mantel. I protected us," I told her, "like you knew I would. And I'm okay now. Lonely sometimes, but okay." The house creaked. Just the old wood settling, nothing more. But I liked to imagine it was Margaret, letting me know she heard me. I'd lost my son, but I'd saved myself. And maybe in doing so, I'd helped save others. That had to count for something. So that's my story. My son tried to steal everything from me when I was at my most vulnerable, and I fought back with every legal weapon I had. Some people say I went too far, that I should have shown mercy, forgiven him, given him another chance. But I ask you, what would you do? If your own child stole from you, forged your signature, tried to take your home while you were mourning your spouse, would you forgive and forget? Or would you protect yourself? There's no easy answer. Family is complicated. Love makes us vulnerable. And sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest. If you've dealt with something similar, or if you know someone who has, share your story in the comments. You're not alone. And if this story helped you in any way, hit that subscribe button. I've got more stories about justice, survival, and fighting back when the people who should protect you become the ones you need protection from. Thank you for listening, and remember, document everything, trust your instincts, and never let anyone, not even family, make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. You deserve better.